What if everything science taught you about consciousness was fundamentally wrong? What if death isn't the end of awareness, but the beginning of something so profound that knowing it would completely transform how you live right now? The revelation I'm about to share didn't come from a book, a religious text, or a meditation retreat. It came from 7 minutes and 43 seconds when I was clinically dead. My brain showed zero activity, yet I was more conscious, more aware, more alive than I'd ever been in my entire life. If you've ever wondered what happens when we die, if consciousness survives brain death, or if there's something beyond this physical reality, what you're about to hear will shake everything you thought you knew about existence itself. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story isn't just entertainment. It might be the most important thing you hear this year, and I need you focused, because the details matter more than you can possibly imagine. Take a deep breath. What comes next will challenge your most fundamental beliefs about reality. Interstate 5, North Seattle, Washington, October 3rd, 2023. 11:47 p.m. Dr. Marcus Webb, 38-year-old neuroscientist specializing in traumatic brain injury research at the University of Washington Medical Center, was driving home after a 16-hour shift. His mind was still processing the day's most frustrating case, a patient who claimed to have had a near-death experience during cardiac arrest, describing conversations in adjacent rooms while his EEG showed flatline brain activity. Impossible, Marcus had told the residents. Consciousness is generated by neural activity. No brain function equals no consciousness. These NDE stories are either fabricated memories constructed after resuscitation or residual electrical activity we can't detect with current equipment. There's always a rational explanation. Marcus had built his entire career on this materialist framework. Consciousness was nothing more than electrochemical reactions in neural networks. The self was an illusion created by brain processes. Death was simply the permanent cessation of these processes. Everything else, souls, afterlife, spiritual dimensions, was wishful thinking from people afraid to accept the finality of death. His phone rang. His ex-wife, Jennifer. He ignored it. Their divorce 3 years ago had been brutal, centered around his inability to connect emotionally, as she'd put it. You treat humans like biological machines, Marcus, including yourself. The rain was getting heavier. Seattle in October. Marcus adjusted his windshield wipers to maximum speed and took another sip of his cold coffee. He needed to finish the grant proposal for his new research project, mapping the precise neural correlates of consciousness using advanced fMRI technology. If he could definitively prove consciousness was purely physical, it would revolutionize neuroscience. He never saw the semi-truck. The driver, later determined to have fallen asleep at the wheel, crossed 3 lanes in 2 seconds. Marcus had just enough time to register a wall of metal filling his windshield before the impact. The sound was beyond description. Metal tearing, glass exploding, his own ribs cracking like dry branches. His Tesla crumpled like aluminum foil against the massive truck. The last thing his conscious mind registered was the airbag deploying and the taste of blood filling his mouth. Then nothing, or so he thought. What happened next defies every principle of neuroscience I'd spent 15 years studying. Instead of darkness, I found myself floating. Not metaphorically, literally floating about 15 feet above the wreckage. I could see my car, or what was left of it, compressed into a shape no human should survive. Emergency lights were already approaching in the distance, and there, slumped over the deflated airbag, head turned at an unnatural angle, was my body. I felt no pain, no panic, just profound curiosity. My scientific mind immediately tried to categorize the experience. Interesting. This must be the DMT release everyone talks about. My brain is flooding with neurochemicals as it shuts down, creating this vivid hallucination. But then something happened that didn't fit the hallucination hypothesis. I noticed details I had no business noticing. The license plate of the semi-truck, Washington State, 7BXK449. The digital clock on the truck's dashboard, 11:51 p.m. The driver, a middle-aged man with a grey beard, climbing out of his cab, his hands shaking violently. He was wearing a blue flannel shirt with a coffee stain on the left pocket. On his passenger seat, I could clearly see a photo of 2 children and a handwritten note that said, "Call Susan, anniversary." My floating consciousness moved closer to my body as paramedics arrived. Male, late 30s, severe trauma to head and chest, one said. Pulse is barely there. Pupils non-responsive. We need to move fast. I watched them cut away my seatbelt, carefully extract my broken body from the wreckage, and place me on a gurney. I felt completely detached from the scene, as if watching a movie about someone else's life. Then I felt a pull. Not physical, but something deeper. A magnetic attraction towards something behind me. I turned, though I had no physical body to turn, and saw what I can only describe as a doorway made of light. Not bright in a painful way, but luminous with a quality that doesn't exist in our visible spectrum. Standing in front of that doorway was a figure. Calling it a person doesn't capture what I saw. It was humanoid in shape, roughly 7 feet tall, but composed of geometric patterns of light that shifted and reconfigured constantly, like living fractals. Where a face should have been, there was a radiance that somehow conveyed infinite compassion and ancient wisdom. "Marcus," the being spoke, though not with sound. The communication was direct, mind to mind. "You're at a threshold." "I'm having a hallucination caused by oxygen deprivation and neurochemical flooding," I responded, clinging to my scientific framework, even in that impossible moment. The being, and somehow I knew his name was Azrael, though no introduction had been made, did something that shook me to my core. He laughed, not mockingly, but with deep, loving amusement. Marcus Webb, PhD. In neuroscience, published 47 papers on consciousness, firm believer that awareness is merely an emergent property of brain function, Azrael said, somehow accessing my entire life history simultaneously. Tell me, if this is a hallucination generated by your dying brain, how are you observing events your brain has no sensory input about? What do you mean? Azrael gestured toward the accident scene below. You noted the truck driver's license plate. Your eyes were closed at impact, and the plate was facing away from your vehicle. You observed the clock in his cab reading 11:51. You saw the note on his passenger seat. You watched the paramedics from an angle impossible from your body's position. How does your brain-generated hallucination hypothesis explain perception without sensory organs? I had no answer. The implications were too massive. What are you? I finally asked. I am what you might call a cosmic guardian. My role is to guide consciousness during transition events, what you call death. But Marcus, here's the secret that will transform everything you think you know. You are not dying. You never can die, because you are not your body. That's impossible. Consciousness requires a functioning brain. Decades of neuroscience prove... Your neuroscience proves that brain activity correlates with conscious experience in embodied beings, Azrael interrupted gently. But correlation is not causation, as you well know. Your entire scientific establishment has made a fundamental category error. The brain doesn't generate consciousness, Marcus. It restricts it. That makes no sense, doesn't it? Tell me, what are you experiencing right now? You have awareness, thought, memory, perception, all the elements of consciousness, yet your brain, as your medical team is about to discover, is showing zero electrical activity. You are clinically brain dead for the next 7 minutes and 43 seconds, and yet here you are, more conscious than you've ever been. The weight of that statement hit me like a physical blow. If I was experiencing consciousness without brain function, everything I'd built my career on was wrong. The brain is like a radio receiver, Azrael continued, using a metaphor I'd heard 1,000 times from pseudoscientists and dismissed as nonsense. It doesn't create the music. It receives and translates the signal. Your consciousness, your true self, is the signal. The brain is merely the biological instrument that allows consciousness to interface with physical reality. When the radio breaks, the music doesn't cease to exist. It simply stops playing through that particular speaker. Then where does consciousness come from? From the same source as everything else, the fundamental field of awareness that underlies all reality. You've been taught to see consciousness as a late-stage accident in a meaningless universe. a quirk of evolved neurons. The truth is reversed. Consciousness is primary. Matter, energy, space, time, these are expressions within consciousness, not the other way around. I wanted to argue, to defend the materialist paradigm, but I was standing outside my own dead body, having a conversation with a light being. My evidence seemed lacking. "I'm going to show you something," Azrael said. "Something every human sees when they fully transition, but few remember if they return. Consider this a preview." The accident scene dissolved. Suddenly I was in a space that wasn't a space, a dimension where physical laws didn't apply. Before me appeared what looked like a massive sphere of living light, and within that sphere I saw my entire life playing simultaneously, not chronologically, all at once. Every moment I'd ever lived, from birth to the accident, existed in that sphere as a complete, accessible whole. Time is an illusion created by sequential consciousness in physical form, Azrael explained. From this perspective, your entire life, past, present, and all possible futures, exists as a singular, eternal moment. You are, right now, simultaneously the baby being born, the child learning to walk, the student defending his dissertation, and the man dying in the accident. These aren't separate events in time. They're different viewing angles of the same eternal existence. My scientific mind was reeling. That violates causality. It suggests that your entire experience of time is a perceptual construct. Yes, in ultimate reality, everything that ever was or will be exists now. Your consciousness moves through these moments sequentially when in physical form, creating the illusion of time's arrow. But from here, you can see it all simultaneously. He gestured toward the sphere. "Watch." I saw myself at age 7 conducting a scientific experiment with my mother, trying to prove that plants could hear music. She was laughing, so alive, so full of love for her curious son. "Marcus, honey, whether it works or not, I'm proud of you for questioning and testing. That's how we discover truth." "My mother," I whispered. "She died when I was 15. Brain aneurysm. Sudden, senseless, devastating. That death had crystallized my atheism. If there was a loving God, my mother, the kindest person I'd ever known, wouldn't have died in her sleep at 43. "Watch what happened after," Azrael said gently. The scene shifted. I saw my 15-year-old self at her funeral, tears streaming down my face, making a silent vow. "I'll prove consciousness is just brain function. I'll prove there's no soul, no afterlife, no divine plan. I'll make sure no one else wastes their life believing in comforting lies." "That moment," Azrael said, "was the moment you locked yourself in a prison of materialism. Your grief needed meaning, and you decided the meaning was to crusade against spirituality. You've spent 23 years trying to prove your mother's consciousness ended when her brain stopped functioning. Because it did." "Did it?" Azrael asked. "Look again." Another scene appeared, my mother, but not as I'd known her. She looked younger, more vibrant, composed of the same light geometry as Azrael, but with unmistakably her energy. "Marcus, my beautiful boy." Her voice entered my awareness, and I felt 38 years of suppressed grief explode in my chest. "I've been with you every single day. Every breakthrough in your research, every paper published, every moment you thought you were alone, I was there, sending you love, whispering insights you thought were your own intuition. Mom," I could barely form the thought. "Death is a doorway, sweetheart, not a wall. I didn't leave you. I simply stepped into a room you couldn't see yet. But I've been cheering you on, praying for your happiness, celebrating your brilliance. The only thing that hurt me was watching you shut down your heart, watching you choose intellectual arrogance over wonder. The grief, the anger, the bitter atheism I'd cultivated for 2 decades, all of it cracked open. I thought you were just gone, that your consciousness, everything that made you you, just stopped. Consciousness can't stop, Marcus. It's the one thing in all existence that's truly eternal. Bodies stop, brains stop. But awareness itself? Never. I am more myself now than I ever was in that limited physical form." Azrael spoke again. "This is what every human fears, and what every human is wrong about. Death is not annihilation, it's liberation. The caterpillar doesn't die when it becomes a butterfly, it transforms into what it was always meant to be. But the brain science, I protested weakly, is accurate within its limited scope, Azrael acknowledged. Brain damage does affect consciousness expression in physical form, just as a damaged radio produces distorted sound. But the music itself remains perfect. When humans die, consciousness doesn't end. It simply stops being filtered and restricted by biological hardware. Then why don't we remember this? I asked. If consciousness is eternal, why don't we remember past lives or existence before birth, or any of this? Because full cosmic awareness would overwhelm a biological nervous system. You're like a drop of ocean water temporarily separated into a cup. While in the cup, you think you're just a drop. But you're not. You're the entire ocean experiencing itself through the perspective of a drop. When the cup breaks, you don't cease to exist. You remember you were always the ocean. A new scene materialized around me. I was in what looked like a vast amphitheater, but instead of seats, there were infinite points of light, each one a consciousness, a being, and they were all watching the sphere of my life. This is the life review, Azrael explained. Every soul experiences this. You witness not just your actions, but their ripple effects. Every kindness, every cruelty, every moment of connection or division, you experience it from all perspectives. The sphere began replaying moments from my life, but with a twist. When I saw myself dismissing a patient's near-death experience, I suddenly felt what she felt. The crushing invalidation, the loneliness of having a profound experience that no one believed. When I saw myself arguing with Jennifer about prioritizing work over our relationship, I felt her pain, her slow realization that I valued my career more than our marriage. This isn't judgment, Azrael clarified. There's no angry deity condemning you. This is education. Consciousness learning about itself through the consequences of its choices. Every human goes through this, seeing clearly how their actions affected the web of existence. But there were beautiful moments too. A homeless man I'd bought coffee for without thinking. I suddenly felt the profound impact that small gesture had on his day, his month, his decision not to end his life that night. A lecture where I'd inspired a student to pursue neuroscience. I felt her joy, her passion, the patients she would eventually help because of that moment. Your life has more meaning than you ever imagined, my mother's presence communicated. Every interaction, every choice sends waves through the fabric of reality. You thought you were just a random collection of atoms following chemical laws, but you're a node in an infinite network of consciousness, affecting everything you touch. If this is all true, I asked, why did you show me? Why am I here instead of just transitioning fully? Azrael's light patterns shifted into something that felt like a smile. Because you have a choice, Marcus. You can continue through that doorway, or you can return to your body. Your physical form is damaged but repairable. The medical team is about to inject you with a pharmaceutical cocktail that will restart your heart and brain function. Why would I go back? If everything you're showing me is real, why would I choose the limited, painful physical existence over this? Because you have a mission you haven't completed. Your research into consciousness was never about proving materialism. Your soul chose to incarnate as a neuroscientist for a specific reason: to be the bridge between scientific materialism and spiritual truth. You're meant to be the credible voice that helps shift human understanding of consciousness. No one will believe me. I'll be dismissed as brain-damaged, hallucinating. Some won't believe, but others will. The patients you've dismissed, the researchers too afraid to challenge the paradigm, the millions of humans terrified of death because they've been taught consciousness is temporary. They need someone like you, someone with credentials, with scientific rigor, who can say, I was wrong. I died. My brain showed zero activity, and I was more conscious than ever. What about the license plate, the truck driver's note? Can I verify those details? You can, and you will. When you wake up, you'll describe things you had no sensory access to. The surgical team will be baffled by your ability to recount conversations that occurred while you were clinically dead. That verifiable evidence will be your proof, not just to others, but to yourself when doubt creeps back in. I looked at my mother's radiant form. Will I see you again? You'll feel me every day, Marcus. And when your physical life is complete, many years from now, after you've completed your mission, I'll be the first consciousness you see when you step fully through that doorway. But honey, you have so much left to do. So many minds to open. So many fears to dissolve. So much love to share. Azrael extended what looked like a hand toward me. The choice is yours, Marcus. Stay in this realm of infinite awareness, or return to the limited but meaningful physical existence. No choice is wrong. I thought about my research, the grant proposal sitting on my laptop, the patients I'd dismissed, Jennifer, whom I'd never truly allowed into my heart because I'd treated love as just oxytocin and dopamine. The students who needed to hear that science and spirituality weren't enemies. I'll go back, I said, but I need to remember this, all of it. You will, Azrael promised. Not every detail. Your human brain can't hold the full scope of cosmic consciousness, but enough. More than enough to transform how you live and how you help others die. One last question, I said. Why don't more people who have near-death experiences share this? Why isn't everyone talking about this? Many do, but they're silenced by ridicule, by scientific dismissal, by religious institutions that feel threatened by their own doubt. You'll face the same resistance, Marcus. Your colleagues will suggest brain damage. Your university might question your competence. But you'll have something they don't: verifiable evidence and the willingness to sacrifice credibility for truth. My mother's light moved closer, and I felt her love wash over me like a wave. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You're about to become the man I always knew you could be. Brilliant and compassionate, scientific and spiritual, skeptical and open. Then Azrael touched my consciousness, and I felt myself being pulled backward, through the doorway of light, through the space between dimensions, back toward the broken body on the operating table. Harborview Medical Center, Seattle. October 4th, 2023, 6:23 a.m. I gasped like a drowning man breaking the surface. Pain flooded every nerve ending. My chest felt like an elephant was sitting on it. Machines beeped frantically around me. "He's back!" someone shouted. "Heart rhythm restored!" Brain activity returning. A face appeared above me. Dr. Sarah Chen, a colleague from the neurology department. "Marcus, can you hear me? You were gone for nearly 8 minutes. We almost lost you." I tried to speak, but my throat was filled with a breathing tube. A nurse quickly removed it and I coughed violently. "The truck driver," I rasped. Grey beard, blue flannel shirt, coffee stain on the left pocket, license plate 7BXK449. Note on his seat says, "Call Susan, anniversary." Dr. Chen's face went pale. "How do you... Your eyes were closed. You were unconscious before the ambulance even arrived." "I was floating," I whispered, "watching. I saw everything." Over the next 3 hours, as they stabilized my condition, 4 broken ribs, collapsed lung, severe concussion, but miraculously no permanent brain damage, I described detail after detail that I couldn't possibly have known. The exact time on the truck's dashboard. The conversation between paramedics about their shift ending soon. The nurse in the ER who'd said, "This one's not going to make it," when she thought no one was listening. Every single detail was verified. Dr. Chen pulled up a chair next to my hospital bed, her scientific worldview visibly cracking. "Marcus, what happened to you out there?" "I died, Sarah. And I discovered we've been wrong about everything." 3 months later. My paper, titled "Consciousness During Clinical Brain Death," a first-person account with verifiable evidence, was rejected by 4 major neuroscience journals. The reviewers called it anecdotal, compromised by trauma, and damaging to the journal's credibility. I didn't care. Instead, I published it independently and started giving talks. Small audiences at first, grief support groups, hospice organizations, metaphysical societies, people who were hungry for the truth I'd discovered. The breakthrough came when a patient, a 62-year-old man with terminal brain cancer, attended one of my talks. After hearing my story, he stopped being terrified of death. He spent his last 3 weeks joyful, telling his family, I'm not ending, I'm just changing forms. His wife sent me a letter. You gave my husband peace in his final days. That's worth more than all the scientific journals in the world. More patients came, more families. Then researchers who'd had their own doubts about materialism, but were too afraid to voice them. A movement started, small, grassroots, but growing. Jennifer reached out. I heard about your experience, and Marcus, you sound different. You sound human. We met for coffee. I told her everything, the accident, Azrael, my mother, the truth about consciousness. She cried. I always felt there was something more, she admitted. But you made me feel stupid for believing in anything beyond the material. You were so certain, so arrogant. I was terrified, I corrected. I used certainty as armor against the unknown. But now I know, the unknown isn't empty. It's infinitely full. We didn't get back together, some chapters close, but we parted as friends, both of us transformed. Today, as I record this story, I'm running a research initiative at a private institute studying consciousness during cardiac arrest, terminal lucidity, and veridical perception in near-death experiences. We're collecting data that traditional neuroscience can't explain away. But more importantly, I'm helping people die without fear and live without the illusion that this brief physical existence is all there is. The secret Azrael taught me, the truth every cosmic guardian knows, is simple but revolutionary. You are not your body. You are not your brain. You are consciousness itself, temporarily wearing a physical form, playing a role in an infinite cosmic drama. Death is not the end of you. It's the end of a character you were playing. And when the curtain falls on this life, you don't disappear. You simply remember who you've always been. That truck driver who fell asleep. I met him 6 months later. He was devastated by guilt until I told him, "You didn't end my life, you saved it." That accident forced me to discover the truth I'd spent 38 years running from. He cried. We both did. So here's what I need you to understand. If you're afraid of death, you're afraid of an illusion. If you're grief-stricken over losing someone, know that they're more present now than they ever were in physical form. If you think consciousness is just neurons firing, you're confusing the television with the broadcast signal. Leave a comment below. Have you had experiences that couldn't be explained by material science? Dreams of deceased loved ones that felt too real? Moments where you sensed a presence? Share your story. You might help someone else break free from the illusion. And if this revelation shook your worldview the way that accident shook mine, subscribe to this channel. Because I'm dedicating the rest of this physical lifetime to sharing what I learned during those 7 minutes and 43 seconds when I was more alive than I'd ever been. Remember this always. The universe isn't happening to you. You are the universe, experiencing itself. Death is just the intermission between acts in an eternal play. The show never ends. It just keeps getting more interesting. See you on the other side. Or actually, see you right here, right now, because there is no other side. It's all one.